Right now, somewhere on Earth, millions of animals are eating their next meal completely raw. Lions tear into fresh meat. Wolves swallow it without hesitation. Sharks have survived for over 400 million years without ever cooking a single bite. Even chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, eat almost everything exactly as they find it. So here's the mystery. If raw food has kept animals alive for millions of years, why are humans the only species that cook? Was it simply because cooked food tastes better? Or did cooking become the greatest survival invention in human history? The answer is far more incredible than most people realize. Because the moment our ancestors learned to control fire, they didn't just change dinner. They changed the human brain, the human body, and eventually, the entire world. In fact, many scientists believe that without cooking, modern humans might never have existed at all. To understand why, we have to travel back nearly 2 million years, long before cities, farms, or even language as we know it. Back then, every meal was a brutal challenge. Early humans spent hours chewing raw roots that were tough as wood, ripping apart raw meat with primitive stone tools, and eating whatever nature offered before another predator arrived. Every bite demanded enormous effort. Their jaws were stronger, their teeth were larger, and their digestive systems worked overtime simply to squeeze enough energy from raw food to survive another day. Finding food wasn't enough. You also had to digest it. And digesting raw food required an incredible amount of energy. Imagine spending most of your day searching for food, then spending the rest of it chewing. That was life for our ancient ancestors. Every extra calorie their bodies burned digesting food was one less calorie available for growing stronger, traveling farther, or developing a larger brain. Then, somewhere in the distant past, everything changed. No one knows exactly who discovered it first. Maybe a lightning strike started a wildfire. Maybe meat from a hunted animal accidentally fell into the flames. Curious and hungry, someone picked up the cooked meat, expecting it to be ruined. Instead, something extraordinary happened. The meat was softer. It was easier to chew. It tasted richer. Most importantly, it required far less effort for the body to digest. Without realizing it, that ancient human had stumbled upon one of the greatest biological advantages in history. Cooking breaks down tough fibers, softens plants, and partially digests food before it even enters the stomach. In other words, fire began doing part of the body's work. Suddenly, humans could extract far more energy from the same amount of food while spending less energy chewing and digesting it. Over thousands of generations, that extra energy didn't simply disappear. It fueled bigger brains, smaller teeth, lighter jaws, and bodies capable of supporting increasingly complex behavior. Around the campfire, something else happened that no other animal experienced. Families gathered, hunters shared food, elders told stories, children watched and learned. Fire didn't just cook meals, it created the first classrooms, the first communities, and perhaps even the earliest foundations of human culture. Long before cities were built, civilization may have begun with nothing more than a glowing fire and a meal that was finally worth waiting for. As scientists began studying ancient human fossils, they noticed something fascinating. Around the time our ancestors started controlling fire, their bodies slowly began to change. Early human species had massive jaws, thick skulls, and large teeth designed for crushing hard roots and tearing raw meat. But over hundreds of thousands of years, those powerful jaws became noticeably smaller. Teeth shrank, faces became flatter. At first, researchers couldn't explain why. Then the evidence started pointing in one direction: cooking. Once food became softer, humans no longer needed enormous muscles just to chew dinner. The body stopped investing energy into oversized jaws and began redirecting those calories elsewhere. And where did much of that energy go? To the brain. The human brain is one of the most expensive organs in nature. Although it makes up only about 2% of our body weight, it consumes roughly 20% of our daily energy. That's an enormous cost. A diet of mostly raw food simply couldn't support a brain as large and energy-hungry as ours. Cooking changed the equation. By unlocking more calories from the same meal, fire gave evolution something it had never offered before: an energy surplus. That surplus helped fuel larger brains, better memory, sharper problem-solving, and eventually the ability to create tools, plan hunts, and communicate more effectively. In a way, every cooked meal became an investment in human intelligence. While other animals evolved stronger claws, sharper teeth, or greater speed, humans evolved something even more powerful: the ability to think. And that transformation may have started with nothing more than a controlled fire. But cooking didn't just change our bodies. It completely transformed the way humans lived together. Imagine a hunting group returning after a long day with fresh meat. Instead of everyone eating alone the moment food was found, they now gathered around a shared fire. Cooking took time, and while food slowly roasted over the flames, people waited together. They talked, they observed one another. They shared knowledge about hunting, dangerous animals, changing seasons, and places where food could be found. Children learned simply by watching adults prepare meals. Elders passed down experience that might otherwise have been lost forever. Anthropologists believe these nightly gatherings strengthened family bonds and encouraged cooperation unlike anything seen in other animals. Fire also offered protection. Predators that ruled the darkness often stayed away from the bright flames, allowing humans to remain active after sunset. For the first time in history, the day didn't end when the sun disappeared. Night became a time for learning, planning, storytelling, and strengthening social relationships. Around those ancient campfires, humans weren't just cooking food, they were slowly building language, culture, trust, and the foundations of civilization. Long before the first city ever existed, the fire at the center of the camp may have been the place where humanity truly began to separate itself from every other animal on Earth. If cooking was such an extraordinary advantage, you might wonder why no other animal ever evolved the same behavior. After all, chimpanzees use tools, crows solve complex puzzles, dolphins communicate with remarkable intelligence. So why didn't they start cooking too? The answer is surprisingly simple. Cooking requires something no other species has ever truly mastered: complete control over fire. It's not enough to recognize flames. You have to create them, protect them, carry them from one place to another, keep them alive through rain and wind, and use them without destroying your food or yourself. That's an incredibly difficult chain of skills. Every wild animal sees fire as a threat. Humans became the only species that saw it as an opportunity. That single decision changed everything. Fire became our greatest survival tool. It frightened away predators, provided warmth during freezing winters, allowed humans to migrate into colder regions, hardened wooden spears, improved tools, and eventually led to pottery, metalworking, and every major technological breakthrough that followed. But perhaps its greatest gift wasn't warmth or protection, it was time. Cooking reduced the hours our ancestors spent chewing and digesting food, giving them more time to think, cooperate, invent, and teach. Around those ancient campfires, knowledge was shared, children learned from elders, plans were made, and communities grew stronger. Long before schools, libraries, or written language existed, the first classroom may have been nothing more than a circle of people sitting around a fire waiting for dinner. The next time you sit down to eat, pause for just a second and think about what's on your plate. That simple cooked meal represents one of the oldest traditions in human history. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, our ancestors gathered around flickering flames, turning raw food into something safer, softer, and far more nourishing. They had no idea they were changing the future. Yet every cooked meal quietly fueled bigger brains, stronger families, longer lives, and the rise of civilization itself. Without cooking, humans might still be wandering forests, spending most of every day chewing raw plants and tearing apart uncooked meat just to survive. Instead, fire gave us something no other animal ever achieved: the freedom to become thinkers, builders, explorers, artists, and storytellers. So maybe the greatest invention in human history wasn't the wheel, or electricity, or even the internet. Maybe it was the moment our ancestors looked into a fire and realized it could transform food. Because that wasn't just the beginning of cooking, it was the moment humans turned fire into the greatest tool evolution had ever given them. And every time you cook a meal today, you're repeating a ritual that began hundreds of thousands of years ago. A ritual that may have made us human.